back to Athlete Builders. Jim Beebe here in the library with my teammate Lucas Lorian. Today we're lucky to have Mickey Marotti from Ohio State football. He's listed as the Associate Athletic Director for Sports Performance. Been with the school the last, this is year 12 or 13?
13.
13. And 37 years overall. Started in West Virginia. We'll get into how he went from there to here. But all in 37 years, three-time national title winner in football, over 50 first-team All-Americans, over 30 first-round draft picks. And I was telling Lucas, man, 30 first-round draft picks, that's one a year for the last 3 decades. Played fullback in high school, played in college, and then right from there got into the strength and conditioning world. 2 times master's degree, one in strength and conditioning, one in sports medicine. It's bounced around from a number of places, but mostly in the Midwest with one trip down south. So 8 years at Cincinnati, 7 years at Notre Dame. Spent some time down in Florida, and then back out at Ohio State. As a GA at Ohio State, met Urban Meyer for the first time, and their paths have crossed for a number of years at a few different places. Had successes all along the way. I met Mickey, this is 2024, in 2022. I simply sent him an email and said, hey, can I come by and talk to you for a minute? And he said, sure. And I drove over to Columbus, went to West Side Barbell, met Tom, and then went to Ohio State. Met Mickey, and I just had some questions about training athletes. And then same thing last year, went over to Ohio, did the same thing, met some more folks. Always been very welcoming, always very giving with his knowledge and help. So we're lucky to have him on today. So we have Mickey Marotti. Thanks for coming on today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yep. Just coming off last season. It's a bit of the, proverbial off season, of which there is none in high level sports. But one of the first questions I like to ask is, how did we get here? So Mick, you went from playing football in West Virginia, now you're at Ohio State. Just give us a little rundown of your journey along the way and how you went from A to B.
Yeah, no problem. Like you said, I played at West Liberty State, which is Division II football out of West Virginia. Loved my time there. Was really intrigued by training, really my whole life, even as a junior high student athlete, I guess you would call me. Was really intrigued by it. Was exposed to powerlifting, Olympic lifting, and even old school circuit Nautilus training, if you will, high intensity training at a young age. Continued that through high school, but went on to college. I was really, really intrigued by it. And at that time in the 80s, strength and conditioning was kind of getting kind of moving forward pretty fast. I think every, school had at least one strength coach at that time. So I was really interested in it. My head football coach, Larry Shank, at West Lib, got me in contact with Steve Bliss at Ohio State here, and I was able to come out and become a GA back in the late 80s. Was around some really, really intriguing people. A guy by the name of Rick Spielman was my classmate, if you will, and he ended up being a general manager in the NFL for 20 plus years. So I got to be around him. Sean Brown was another one who's been in the field for a long time. He's currently at West Virginia as a basketball strength coach. So I was around a lot of good people at that time. It was Earl Bruce's last year, so he had gotten let go as the head football coach in my first year. So it was kind of a pretty cool introductory to this business. Like, do you really want to do this? Like, they're letting coaches go. And so anyways, I wanted to pursue it. So after a year here, got my master's, like you said. Then I went on to West Virginia University. Al Johnson, if you know Al, was my mentor at that time. Spent 2 years there. The first year at West Virginia, we actually played for the national championship, which was, kind of the first exposure at a level, championship level back then. We got beat by Notre Dame. That was 1989 or 88.
89, right?
Was when West Virginia played Notre Dame in the
Tony
Fiesta
Rice
Bowl.
and all them.
Yes, exactly. So they had beat us that first year. And the second year, we ended up at the Gator Bowl. And then I was 25. Back then, at the age of 25, I got the chance to become the head strength and conditioning coach at the University of Cincinnati, which was, probably not ready for that. Nowadays, it's a little bit different. There's so many more opportunities for young strength coaches to kind of build and grow through the field. But it was the right place, the right time. So at 25, I'm at Cincinnati, 20 sports, 450 athletes, 1 GA, and here you go. Here's the keys, and go ahead and run the program. So it was
Oh my
it was
God.
overwhelming. Yeah,
Yes.
it was
Yeah.
extremely overwhelming. But I knew that work had got me to this point, so you just had to go down and work. I started the job in June of 1990. I was 235 pounds, just coming off of the big powerlifting and playing in college. 6 months later, I was 195 pounds. And it wasn't because I was trying to lose weight. It was just you were on your feet and busy. And I never ate lunch, the first 5 years of being on the job, because you had teams. You had 20 teams, and there was one strength coach. You had a GA, and his classes were from like 1 to 6, 1 to 7. That's like the majority of when you're training in the afternoon at that, with a lot of sports. So I
Right.
was by myself. There wasn't interns like there are now. It just wasn't like it is. So you just learned how to do things on your own. You used some help through some of the sport coaches, and over time we had built it where I got a couple assistants, a couple interns, and when I left, 1998, I believe it was. I think it was left in a better spot than when I first got the job. So from there, I went to Notre Dame, had a great experience, 7 years, different level of athlete, different level of athletics, different level of expectation. Probably one of the top 1 or 2 or 3 football traditions in our college football history. So really cool. Just being around all those type things. Spent 7 years there. Went through a few head coaches, and then I went off to
Who was there
Florida
when you were there?
back in 2005. That was Urban Meyer at Florida.
Or Meyer? Right.
2005,
Yeah,
which would have
okay.
been his first year. My first year. Actually, Urban he was a wide receiver coach when I first got to Notre Dame. So there was a lot of connections there. And then I went to Florida, and when we got to Florida, our football staff was, there was like 5 or 6 guys that were on that staff at Notre Dame. So I had known a bunch of them. So it made that transition a little easier. I knew what, Urban's beliefs and my beliefs were very similar. So it's always good to be around someone that believes in what you believe. So it made the transition, like I said, a lot easier for my family. My kids were in elementary school at the time, but they knew some of the other kids of the coaches. So it was easy for them. It was easy for my wife. And we had a great time there. Won 2 championships. Was around some of the best at the world at what they did at playing the game of football. Just Tim Tebow and Percy Harvin and Brandon Spikes, and the list can go on and on and on and on. So very fortunate to be a part of that. And then I had a chance in 2012 to come back to Ohio State with Urban, and then kind of set this program up. The difference of the 3, Cincinnati, Notre Dame, and Florida, I was the director of the strength and conditioning program for all sports and ran football. When I came here in 2012, it was just football. So I kind of was super excited about it, because now you can just focus on football, and not that you didn't appreciate and didn't enjoy the other sports, because you did. And that, I think it forced you to grow, but just spending all my energy on football was really good. And then 5 years later, here at Ohio State, Gene Smith said, okay, now you're going to be in charge of all 36 sports, plus 3 others that we train, the 2 cheerleading squads, and also the dance team. So all in all, at Ohio State currently, we have 39 sports that we train. We have 1,100 athletes. My staff is 22 full-time employees, which covers strength and conditioning, sports science, and then we have anywhere from 10 to 15 interns under our umbrella. So it's a pretty big operation. You got to be organized and you got to have the right people involved. So that gets me to here, January 22nd, 2024, talking to you guys.
Wow. Big change from you running the whole show by yourself in Cincinnati to an enormous staff at Ohio State. This is completely an aside, and it's like, hey, if you're a police officer, someone might say, hey, do you know this other officer? And you're like, well, there's 1,000 of them, so no. But the chance you know this guy, his name's Phil Sacuso. He was a wide receiver / option quarterback out of Boston that went to Notre Dame and was there when Urban was the receivers coach. And he was mostly, let's see, so like early 91 to 95, somewhere around there, maybe.
Yeah, he wouldn't.
92 to 96.
Yeah.
And so he's running the scout team whenever they play an option opponent. So he's running the quarterback, but he was a receiver and a defensive back. And so one of the drills, he's playing defensive back, and he sheds the receiver who's blocking him because the guys are running an end around. And so the guard's pulling, and here comes the running back behind the guard. And the guard hits Phil and launches Phil. And his arms and legs are parallel with the ground, and he lands and his head bounces. And Urban, who was helping out over there with that drill, runs over to Phil to take a look at him. And one of Phil's eyes is like looking like inside, the other one's looking like this, and it's just nothing's happening. So then he calls the lineman to come over to him. They both have their helmets on, and he tells the lineman to headbutt him in the face with the helmet on. And then it knocks his eyes, and they're actually back looking straight again. Phil and I used to work together at the gaming commission. We were both doing financial investigation. He's the chief legal counsel. He's an attorney there. Great family. He's actually godfather to one of our kids. So,
wow,
it is one of the stories he had at Urban. Like I said, I don't think you would know him, but just kind of an interesting aside. Just right off the bat, before we were scheduled to meet with you, Lucas and I, we watched separately the show on Netflix. Those boys down in the swamp talking about
Swamp Kings, yeah,
Swamp Kings, yeah. And it's the first time I saw it in the media, but the second time I had heard about the mat drills that you guys are kind of famous for. And there's sometimes there's purpose to train, sometimes not purpose to train. Sometimes some people are good at it, some people are not. But my understanding is that the purpose of mat drills is to build and callous that mind so you can handle adversity and pain and suffering, so you don't quit. Right. So 100%. One of the first questions I want to ask you, can you, without getting too much in the weeds, can you describe the mat drills and what they could be like, or the overall theme, or some scenarios or situations and the takeaways?
Yeah, no problem. That was a big part of our program, and it still is. Obviously, the rules have changed over time, just with health and safety, NCAA, guidelines. But back then, we would do these in our winter training program that started when the coaches got off the road in February, and it would go all the way till the first or second week in March. So maybe 4 or 5 weeks. We would do it on a Wednesday, which is an off day of training, or at least in the weight room. And what it was, we used the old Florida gym, which is an old gym that was right next to the stadium. And because wrestling wasn't big in Florida, now there is a little bit, they do have some programs, but not like it is in the state of Ohio or the Midwest. So we couldn't find big giant wrestling mats. So we had to get those like gymnastics mats that kind of held together with Velcro, and I think they're 6x8, and you kind of roll out 3. Yep. So what it was is it's 6 stations, and the team is divided into either teams or squads or by their unit. We did it a bunch of different ways. You have 6 different stations, and every station is predicated on commands, and the commands are the same. Set, ready, ready, hit. And set tells you to get in an athletic football position. Ready, ready, you kind of buzz your feet, kind of we used to call it foot fire. And then hit is the beginning of the drill. And if you were on a mat and you were doing just the old bear crawl, seat rolls, just quick, twitchy movements on all 6s, all 4s, and we would direct you. It would be almost like a reaction wave drill. And you do a seat roll right, seat roll left, seat roll right. Then you do a somersault out, and then you would sprint off the mat and break down. But it all had to be in sync. And if one guy went the wrong way, or one guy didn't clap when he was supposed to clap, or do whatever, then we would send the group back. And how it was set up was the older guys were up front and the freshmen were in the back. And you may have 6 rows of 4, maybe 4 or 5 players across. So when the guys would jump out and do their seat rolls, the next group had to get down in a football position and hold it there in that football position as long as it took for them to get through this sequence of drills. And if one guy put his hand on his thigh or scratched his head or had a bad football position or came up, straightened his legs out, we would send the whole groups back. So what it was discipline. It was organization. It was, kind of that mental fatigue of being in this football position, but also being able to pay attention and follow directions in a fatigue state. So that was about 3 or 4 of the drills. And a couple of the drills might have been one-on-one tug of war. The drills that you've seen on the Swamp King were one guy would, you'd be in partners, and one guy would get on the ground on his belly, and the other guy would kind of straddle him on top. And the objective was the guy on the bottom had to make it to the end of the mat and touch the tape. Now he couldn't get up on his feet. He had to stay down kind of in a snake bear crawl position. And there was no rules, whatever it took to get to the line or whatever it took to hold the guy back. So you've seen some of that on that video, which brought back some memories. But that was kind of you're not allowed to do that nowadays. You're not allowed to have, heartbeat against heartbeat. So, which I understand fully, but back then it was just different. Commonplace, So yeah. And then you would kind of rotate, and if somebody didn't, it was hard. It was hard.
And what was it like coaching those guys? It's when you saw in the tape and in the series, those guys were just violent. The way they talked about the weight room, what was it like coaching those guys?
It was challenging. It was it was fun. It was kept you on your toes. It was just guys that had so much energy, and they came from, when we got there, we did a lot more national recruiting than maybe the staffs before us. So we had guys from up north, we had guys from the Midwest, we had guys from the West, and then you get the Florida boys together. It's a melting pot of a lot of energy and testosterone. It was fun. I had a blast. It's funny. A lot of our young players have never been exposed to strength training at any level. They just did it, which is very surprising. Even that's only 20 years ago. But they were always, they were always athletic. They always played basketball. They ran track. Did something outside. It's nice outside all the time. In the Midwest, you grow up, at least where I grew up in Pittsburgh, you grew up in a weight room. And when you would pass one of your boys or one of your buddies in the hallway, it was, what's your bench up to now? How's your bench doing? Where's that squat at? And the kids down, some of the high schools in Florida, they just never did it. It was all about racing and running. And, they used to have street races after practice. Like they would literally be walking back to the dorms and they would like line up and get on a street that wasn't, busy with cars or anything and take off and race. That's a big deal. So it was fun to be around some of those guys. I mean, the one thing you had to do is every day you came in, you had to expect the unexpected. So yeah, it was fun.
The first part you described in those mat drills, it was simply basics of military formation, of getting your whole squad or your whole line lined up in formation and executing the task at hand. And if someone breaks down, then the whole platoon or the whole unit or the whole squad, feels the results and the repercussions. And then you add in duress. Can you concentrate and execute underneath that brain fog? And then when someone else in the team lets you down, it's obviously like it's no different than someone being offsides or someone having a holding penalty or someone missing a tackle. It's the same concept over and over again. And when you're in a physical line of work, Army regiment or football team, those similarities, they have plenty of carryover, and the lessons learned and the habits of being in formation and working together is going to be a lot of carryover and a lot of benefits. So you can see the value that you and Urban were instilling down there in Florida and Ohio State and Notre Dame too when you guys were there.
Yeah, 100%. It was when you talk about the military, back in the day, if you ever watched some of those old movies, and they were starting boot camp, and the first thing they would do is teach them how to march. And
right.
when guys would screw up those marching lines, they would stay there and keep doing it until they got it right. And that's kind of you're right on with it. I mean, it's kind of right on doing things together and counting on each other. And the cool thing about mat drills are when you get to the back of the lines, those are your young freshmen. Well, at least in major college football, those young freshmen, like they're going to be required to be on kickoff and special teams, and jump in when the older guys might need a series off, but they got to be ready to go. So that was the whole intent, was when it's your turn and to make a play, you got to be ready to go. So
at least when they're in the back of the line, they get a few reps to be able to watch what the veterans are doing, so they can learn a little bit. But you want to get like a minute or two, right? So, and then they're drinking through that fire hose pretty quick.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming hard.
It's coming, right? Yeah. And too bad, because you got to win now, and it doesn't matter if your number is called. That's the deal.
That's the deal.
There's different traditions in every place. Different traditions, every family, company, business, religion, you name it. Some of the traditions, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and then down south, Southern football. Any of them stand out? You're like, hey, I kind of miss this at Notre Dame, or I miss this about being in the South, or it'd be cool if we had this here at Ohio State, or the South Florida's missing what we have here at Ohio State. Any of those traditions that stand out to you that you're like, oh, that's pretty cool there. It's too bad we don't do that here.
I don't see it as those were cool, and I wish we do them here. I think each institution and each program has their own little collective, like you said, tradition, things that you do at Notre Dame. The one thing I really enjoyed and really bought into was right before the games. The team would go into Basilica, and you would have mass. And the cool thing about it was, a lot of those players aren't Catholic. I mean, Notre Dame's a Catholic institution. I mean, we had all kind of different religions. We had, and it was to see all those guys just go together. And heck, we had one of our captains, Mike Rosenthal, was Jewish, and he was reading from the Bible, because that's what the captains at Notre Dame did. They read a scripture, and he did it. And just to see all that just kind of come together, at Florida, it's different. The when you hear third down, like when you're in the stands, and this is the first time I heard it, when you're in the swamp on third down, like you can't talk to the guy next to you on the sidelines because it's so loud. And I've never, it wasn't like that at Notre Dame. It wasn't like that at Cincinnati. But you get all of a sudden, you're like, oh, wow, this is real. And then in Ohio State, we have all kinds of traditions that are, Carmen, Ohio after the game, and the victory bell after a win, and the script Ohio, which gives goosebumps
Right.
to anybody from the state of Ohio, because you're doing the script Ohio, and someone's going to dot the I.
Right.
Senior tackle was one through the football program where it represents the last practice that a senior is going to have, and they get up in front of the team and talk about maybe a story or two and give a message to the young players, and then they run up and tackle you've seen it, they tackle the blocking dummy to signify their last tackle, last practice. That's very emotional because these players put so much in, staff put so much in, from on a daily basis to a yearly basis. So those traditions are really part of college football, which that's what I love.
That's what, you see so much in college versus the pros, they're running out with a big longhorn steer or a buffalo or the world's largest drum, or someone's got, a sword they're putting in the ground, and it's just like, oh man, it's just a lot of fun. And I always told people if I were king of the world and had all the money, I would just travel to all the different college football stadiums first, and then go to the major bowl games and watch them. And just hang out there, because that's just a good time. We talk about different things, building the athlete, and this whole premise of the show is being an athlete builder. We're talking about mindset. You simply wrote clarity of purpose, or something that's critical for mindset. Could you talk about that piece a little bit?
Yeah. So we've done a lot of research with military training, from Navy SEALs and the Rangers, and we've had so many former military personnel come and speak with our staff and coaches and our players. And I believe, if my memory serves me correct, I believe it was in the Lone Survivor book, and they're talking about clarity of purpose. And clarity of purpose is knowing exactly what the mission is, exactly what you're supposed to do. The expectations are laid out clear, clean, and concise, black and white. And if a student athlete at this level, really any level, knows exactly what the mission is and what the job responsibility is and what the objective is and what your goal is, it's so much easier to just put everything into it. I think when it's too much gray, and they have this area telling them one thing, this area telling them another thing, this area telling them another thing, and the athlete's confused. And when there's confusion, then there's hesitation. When there's not a clear heart, clear mind, clear soul, then that athlete has a hard time really buying in and giving you everything that he has or she has. So clarity of purpose is something we talk about a lot. And as long as they know what the mission is and they know exactly how to get there, most of the times they're going to get there.
One of the things I talk about with student athletes and kids I help coach, we talk about, knowing your job, and you hear Bill Belichick say, just know your job, do your job, which is a component, right? Knowing your job. But I further challenge the athletes, and I say, like, if you're playing linebacker, your job is to know your job and all the linebackers as well. Because in case someone that's new, someone gets hurt, someone else that's new comes on the field and they're out of position, you got to move that person over. Then you also got to know what the D-line is doing so you can react to the guys behind you as well. So there's a level where clarity of purpose, where you got to know the mission and the objective in your job. But isn't there a little bit more to it that you got to kind of know some of the folks around you, especially if you're in a leadership role?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. That's kind of like if you look at the last couple of years with our defense, you bring up defense. The first year with our new defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, it was, you're going to know what you're supposed to do. And then that was it. Players were satisfied with knowing what they're supposed to do. But then you look at, we went from, 38th or 40th in the country. And I believe we were ranked third this year on defense. It's because of those players knowing, that linebacker knowing what the defensive line is supposed to do on this play and where the leverage is on a run defense, or, the coverage is going to change when they go trips to the right or whatever the formation is, and they understand the swing and the back end of, now you go from 3 deep to 2 deep, and you're going to shift from, this hash to that hash, and knowing to keep everything inside and in front. So yeah, you're exactly right. It's everything. But if they don't know from that, that beginning part, that primitive part of what your job is and what you're supposed to do, it's like when they come in the weight room, like we just had 17. We just have 2 more show up this weekend. So we'll have 18 either mid-year freshmen or transfers that just started in our program here within the last week or two. So the clarity of purpose for them is going to be a little bit different than, Jack Sawyer, who's going to be a 4th-year senior. These people, these young athletes, just trying to figure out, like, their purpose is just show up on time in the right gear, and then we'll slowly progress them as they go and get an older guy with a younger guy. You'd be surprised. Like I said, again, there's, I give so much credit to the high school strength and conditioning coaches and, like you, Jim, that are working with young athletes, because there are some athletes that just aren't exposed to training, and it affects them when they get here, especially nowadays. I would love to speak to high school strength coaches around the country in a big conference, because what's happening now is if these players aren't, like, ready to go, like, during their first spring football and then being ready to play their first year, like, because of the transfer portal, they're going to leave. So if they're behind physically, they're going to be behind. They're just going to be. So it's so important now, even more than in the past, because you don't get 1 or 2 or 3 years of development with some of these guys. You just don't, at least here, because, if they're not playing right away, they're going through those metal detector portal beams and they're out.
Right.
Do you think the transfer portal has affected your ability to develop athletes?
I think it's going to, absolutely. I mean, I just poured my whole heart and soul into, 4 freshmen. They just left. And they were, we kind of spread them out through our staff, and I think 2 or 3 of the guys were the guys that I was training all during the season, and they were doing great. And then they leave for whatever reason. There's a lot of reasons why guys leave. So can't take it personal. It's the business that we're in. But what you have to do is, the time that you have it, like, the sense of urgency is sped up. It is like it's sped up. The problem with, like, you guys know, it's what you do. You can't speed up physical development. Like, you have to go through these stages. Like, you can't.
Sure.
There has to be a
You're not going to squat 500 if you can't squat the bar. Yeah. Now, let me ask you this, because this is kind of like go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm good.
One of these, I don't know. I can't say it's a kick that I'm on, but it's definitely something I've been screaming from the mountaintops. I work with younger kids, not college kids like you. So junior high kids, and then high school kids, and I got a few college kids I help mentor and coach. But the younger kids, if you're, I'll be 50 this year, and you've been around a little while as well. When we were kids, you played either CYO ball or rec league. And if you're pretty good in that sport, say it was basketball, or baseball. At the end of the season, you might have like another 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks of travel all-stars. Get some more reps. You're on a better team. You go against some better competition. You get better that way. Those kids get more reps. They're probably playing in high school than a few of those play in college. Well, now so many kids play travel sports, and they might focus on one at a very early age, or two at an early age, and then one later. What I see now that was the separator was those extra reps. Now is the standard, and now the separator is that they're not strong, they're not powerful, they're not quick because they haven't developed their posterior at all. They don't have the muscle development. So increase in ACL tears, increase in arm problems in baseball, you name it. And now the separator is, are you strong enough to be able to handle the college level volume for a 13 or 16-year-old? Because that's how many reps you're getting with all the travel sports. And they're not physically prepared. So you're overlooking 30 plus sports now. And of course, at your school, only really the good ones go there. But at the other schools where maybe you're not getting the top of the world, I gotta believe that's gonna be a problem, or is a problem, that you'll be seeing in college that these kids are playing all these sports and they're not physically prepared for it yet.
Yeah, 100%. And you just see it like more and more and more, the last few years. And now, basketball was the first to be the travel ball and all that. Now it's 7-on-7 leagues,
right.
AAU. Yep. Now you got 7-on-7 leagues, which now, you literally have kids from Fort Wayne, Indiana, are on a South Florida team, so they're traveling all over the country to play 7-on-7. Every time you get in that plane, like, it doesn't take an hour, 45 minutes to get from point A to point B. Like, those are like half a day's to travel, and you're in a plane, and then you get out, and you're doing 7-on-7 all day, and then you get back in the plane, and then all of a sudden you got to go back to school, and like, there isn't time to train in terms of strength training. Like, I'm very concerned. I don't know how we fix that.
What I tell people is miss some practices and go get stronger instead, and then play in the weekends.
That's a great point. Dr. Kramer, Bill Kramer, is a senior advisor for us, which is, we're honored to have him, one of the top 3 or 4 sports scientists in the world, is our senior advisor. And we just did a big survey of high school athletes, for really incoming freshmen, what their exposure was to fitness and strength training and speed training and conditioning at the high school level. And it's very concerning, very concerning. So
sure.
I think it's interesting that you bring up Fort Wayne, Indiana, with the 7-on-7, because it is a very big thing up here. And we got, I run into kids where it affects, I just run the PE classes, the strength conditioning classes, the after school programs, all that. I got kids I'm not going to go hard today because I got a 7-on-7 tournament. It's every single week, all year round. And it's just interesting that you bring that up, because it's a challenge. It's a challenge for me and anybody that's in my position working with high school kids, that kids are just deliberately missing out on an important part of their development just to be good at 7-on-7. And they think they're getting what they think they're getting compared to what they're actually getting is just, it's just such a misconception for some of them. And it's hard to work with.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing it's somewhat alarming is, even those, and we have a bunch of kids like this, even those athletes that were fortunate enough to be able to afford, like, their families were able to afford training, like high end, like, skill training. So, for example, one of our defensive backs from Arizona was at a big facility in Arizona around Phoenix, has a number of those high end, skill development gyms with, half is turf and the other half is your weight room.
Mm-hmm.
Great skill development, like from ex-NFL players, DB guys, great guys. But somebody is not advising them to go on the other side of that facility and like train. So we got great skill work, and I'm like making fun of this one. I'm not going to say his name. I'm like, hey, you forgot to go on the other side of the gym and get your squats or lunges or RDLs in. You spent way too much time here. And it's funny though, that's their brand. So when you pull a kid up, which I'm not on Instagram or Twitter, but if the kids will show me their Instagram account is like their drill work that they do at the facility, or our guys come back till 9:00 at night. Marvin Harrison Jr. was a perfect example. He would spend hours upon hours, honing his skills of being a wide receiver, catching balls. Like he'd catch 500-600 balls a day, and they put that on Instagram, and that's their brand. I love that because you're getting work in, but you better be a balanced athlete and make sure you're strong enough to handle that workload, because there's going to be problems.
They could build their brand in the weight room too,
I know, but it's just, that's not the cool thing
squat,
right now.
Push a huge sled push, all that matters.
I tell our guys that if they it's great that they're getting their skill work in, but at some point you're going to do so much skill work running the same route or whatever it is that you're doing. At some point you're going to cap out you're going to run these routes at the same capacity and the same output that you've always done it, until you start working in the weight room and start developing more output. And I try to get them to kind of understand that, because at some point you're beating a dead horse, I think. And just trying to communicate.
With any athlete, it's no different than any business, right? In that I might have the best car, but I don't have any marketing, so no one knows about it. Marketing is now my limiting factor. I keep making a better and better car, but no one knows. If I don't fix my limiting factor in the marketing, then no one knows about my car, no one buys it. You might run the best routes, but if you're 100 pounds, you're not playing football in college. You only weigh 100 pounds, right? There's a limiting factor. And I just had an athlete this week, Sarah. She's a real good local competitive CrossFitter. She sent me this message. She says, "Hey, if I'm hitting these numbers on my strength, like am I good there? Do I need to do any more?" I go, "No, you're good." So like my son who plays football, I'm like, he doesn't need a 700 squat to play middle linebacker. He squats 500 for 3. He's fine there. We got to find, does he have how's his sleep patterns? Does he know all the playbook? What's his weight at? Is he only weighing 215? Well, that's not be very good to play what he wants to play. He needs to be around 230, 235 statistically. So the athlete, that's why we talk about the 3 things for the head and 3 for the body. If they don't fix the limiting factor, that's what it's called, a limiting factor, and the athlete can't progress. It doesn't matter how dominant your competitive advantages in the business, we have the best car, or the athlete, he's the fastest runner, but can't catch a ball, right? Until the limiting factor is addressed, and all of it will not progress. It's the weak link in the chain, and the weak link breaks. So that's why I keep telling people, that's the math behind it. Look at any business, look at any relationship, look at any athlete. It's the same deal. You can't break those truisms, right?
Correct.
That's my little speech. My little rant.
Yeah, there you go.
Talk. You mentioned those guys in the weight room or in the field. I always like to ask a couple characteristics you see of leaders on the field, off the field, and in the weight room. Because you'll have different leaders and different leadership qualities. What are some things that you guys see consistent, or you guys try to groom and build in leadership on the field, off the field, or in the weight room?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. Leadership. There's 3 things that a leader has to have, or they're not a leader. Number 1, they have to be seen. So they have to be a leader by example. If someone is able to be a leader by example, then they also have to exhibit being heard. So they have to be a vocal leader. And I hear this all the time, like, well, he just, he's not vocal. He just, does what you ask him to do. Then, well, he's not a leader. That means he or she is compliant. They're just following the direction.
Right.
So you got to be seen, you got to be heard. And then the last one is kind of that emotional, you got to be felt. So that's that guy that he's an energy giver, not an energy taker. You want to be around them. They're the ones, 10 minutes or 15 minutes before training, like they got the music going. They're getting amped up. They're getting ready to train. They're getting everybody fired up. Like that's that energy giver. You guys have all seen them. Those are the guys you are attracted to rather than the energy takers. So
Right.
those are like three qualities of a leader. We also define leadership. Number one is earn trust. So for our guys to be considered a leader or on a leadership committee or a captain, they've had to have earned their teammates, their coaches, their staff, their trust. And then the second thing is they have to set the standard and hold everybody up to that standard. That's kind of our definition of when we talk about leadership and leaders, of those type of things. So that's a big part of it. We just voted on our leadership committee or leadership council. We have 15 guys right now. And I lean on those guys a lot for input, for evaluation, for, development. I'm harder on the leaders than I am on the other, 75 guys, just because if everyone sees me holding those leaders up to a standard and holding them accountable, they're going to do the same with their teammates. And here, like probably high school, kids are, they're motivated by peers. So peer pressure is a huge deal. So if those leaders can really help bring those 75 young athletes or guys that aren't leaders up to that standard, I think we used to call it pull them into the circle. Like you got 15 people in a circle, big giant circle, like get a guy and pull them across that line and pull them across that barrier and bring them along. And there's many ways to do that, challenging and be demanding and maybe just developing that relationship with them, spending time with them outside the facility. Because we talk about trust, there's four like characteristics of trust. I think number one, for you guys to trust me, I've got to have some sort of competence. So it's called the 4 C's. So you have competence. Number two, they've got to be of good character, right? I mean, guy can't be full of crap, or a gal can't be full of crap. They've got to have good character, a positive influence. The third thing of trust is connection, spending time with each other and being connected in a way will help develop trust, which helps leadership. And then the last one is consistency, being that same consistent voice. That's why I commend, the training facility owners that are running a program and high school strength coaches and college strength coaches. And, you have all those, because if you don't have those four, you're not a very good coach. You're not a very good business owner. You're not a very good leader without trust. And if you really look at any relationship, even like, if you guys are married, your wife, your parents, your son, your daughter, your cousin, whoever it is, where you have a relationship with, trust, you probably have those 4 things, right?
And you can
man
feel
of the
it
house
when
got to know what the hell he's talking about.
one's missing, right?
Exactly, 100%.
When one piece is missing, like let's say you got like a little teenager and they make a mistake, so their consistency is a little broken. Maybe they lie. Maybe you cut them in a lie. So the consistency is not there. The character is not there. They're smart. You have a connection with them, but there's a little damage now. So the trust is weakened a little bit. You have to work a little more to build that back up. You mentioned peer pressure, and it's not from my standpoint, it's not the pressure of, hey bro, let's go out and let's get loaded tonight. Pressure to go out drinking and partying, which it still could be. I find there's pressure. Kids sometimes don't want others to know that they're trying real hard. that, hey, I'm doing this extra work, or I don't want to get C's and D's on the test. I want to get some A's and B's and do all right there. I want to go back to the weight room and get this right, or let's run some extra sprints because I'm getting my ass beat. So there's like even pressure in the opposite direction. They're worried about how they're looked at. They're trying to work harder. They're worried about the perception that way. You come across that very much? They're like a try hard,
all
and
the
that's
time.
like a big negative.
All the time.
It's like the
kind of
opposite.
like, it's kind of like, I say it in a different sense. I say, it's cool to go hard. It's cool to, work hard. It's
Right.
cool to win the race. It's cool to, make your body weight. It's cool to be on time. And sometimes, 17 and 18-year-old freshmen, even 19, 20-year-old sophomores and juniors, there's a little insecurity there. So they don't want to, stand out. They
Right.
don't want to, maybe they're always fighting against what the coach or the leaders are saying, because they want to be that guy that's just different. And sometimes you gotta, to me, that's where that connection comes from. You just got to break their barrier down and say, hey man, like, this ain't working. Like, whatever you're doing is not working. Like, you're not going to be here much longer if you continue down this path. So I agree. Yeah, they're very influential at this age.
Sure. Right. That part's not new. That's been like that for centuries.
Sure.
So how do you find, as you age, your team still stays the same age, just like Wooderson said in Dazed and Confused, right?
Yeah.
So as you're 45, 50, 55, 60 years old, it's still dealing with an 18-year-old. How's it relating? Even music's different, right? It's not Run DMC like it was for me back. I listened to some fun stuff back then. So like everything's different. What are some things where it's been a little shocking about relating? My own kids alone, their vocabulary I don't understand. No cap this, no cap that. It's dude, that's lit, or this is fire.
It's funny,
I'm like, come on, man. So this guy
funny,
doesn't get it.
No, but these guys, they keep at least they keep your mind and your soul young, because the way they talk to each other and, all the slang words and the music, like, we embrace that stuff. Hella was a big word a couple years ago. I say that like in team meetings, and the place goes nuts. Like, so you try to relate to them and you try to spend time with them, and it rubs off. Just like, if, like, your parents used to say, don't hang out with Johnny, he's a bad boy. If you hang out with Johnny, you're probably smoking cigarettes and drinking beer in 8th, 9th grade, because you are who you hang out with, is basically.
Yeah.
So I hang out, how many hours today? We were 8 hours with 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old guys. You just kind of act like them. You walk like them. You move like them.
Start saying the same things.
Now, I will never give up my classic rock in the weight room. And the players love it. They actually like know the words to War Pigs, Black Sabbath, because we play it so much.
I'm sure they're playing some of their own stuff too, though, right?
Oh yeah, you got to, right? You gotta let them be them. Let them be who they are. And we have
they listen
fun,
to the most.
Oh boy. Who obviously they're listening to the hot rap artists right now.
Okay.
Whoever that is. Because you think about it, like, Jim, who's like a hot new rock band? There aren't any.
I don't know. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
That band's a lot of individuals, a lot of individual artists.
Yeah. Back in the 80s, it was, all these bands, Linkin Park in the 90s, and right. And then we kind of play everything just to get everybody, but it's fun.
One of our prior guests, his name's Dan Brown. His name's Dan Brown. He was a GA at Purdue, and Jim, I think, Lathrop was the strength coach. And similar in that they would play all kinds of music. But Jim's rule was, all right, and this is with a CD, so not with a playlist or some type of streaming service. But if you like this song on this CD, here's the deal: we're listening to the whole thing. You got to listen to all the songs on the CD, then we'll pick something else. But you don't just get to pick your one or two favorite songs. We're listening to the whole artist and get a feel for what they're all about. So I kind of like that idea. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's good. That's good.
Good time. And sometimes I'll say the slang absolutely horribly just to make them cringe. And I think if I'm doing something well, I say, "Hey, well, you are not putting the shade on me today." And they're saying, throwing shade, and I'm like, I'll say it like that. I'll say it at home in front of my daughter, and she's just like, "Oh, Dad, no."
Yeah, don't
stop.
do that. Don't.
Never. The thing with the training, and the embracing the suck. We talked about the mat drills. How about the two things that no one really they aren't really sexy at all? The nutrition and the sleep and the recovery. Everybody wants to have a big squat. Everybody wants to have huge arms. Those are it's fun to lift. It's fun to do those things, but eat and sleep, big limiting factor, right? So I always want to tap into that. How do you try to move the needle there? Because that's a tough one.
Yeah, again, like a place like Ohio State, we have great resources. Kayla Olson is our head dietitian. She has she has 2 or 3 assistants and a bunch of interns. We try to use science as obviously, because it's going to guide us in the right direction. So the first thing that they do when they get here is we get them a DEXA scan, and we try to figure out a couple things. Number one, body fat, muscle mass content, bone density, how much muscle mass they can actually put on their skeletal system, and then what position they play. Because like if you can only safely put 200 pounds on a defensive end, it's not going to work because you can't play defensive end in Big Ten at 200 pounds. So we look at their job description. We look at their speed, agility, their movement, flexibility. We look at all the physical evaluation tests. Then we look at what we can safely put on their body. She gets them set up with a meal plan, and then we have an action plan for each athlete, what their goals are, and then we do it progressively, just like strength conditioning. There's a weight goal, there's an end goal, and then each week they have to hit their body weight goals. We test that DEXA scan or muscle mass, body fat, probably 4 times a year, give us a periodic look at where they're at, how they're moving. And then we talk about it all the time. Before every session, before every team run, we're always talking about, properly fueling your body and how important it is. So the one good thing, great thing that we have at Ohio State is with all of our performance staff, I'm the kind of the head of that. And we have what's called an athletic performance team meeting. We have that every week, and everybody on the performance staff, we meet. So we're all on the same page with each athlete. So we don't have the athletic trainer saying, "Oh, you're too heavy, you got to lose weight," or whatever it is. And then the nutrition, people are telling them something different. And then the strength conditioning, people are telling them something different. So we're all kind of on the same page. So that's almost kind of that clarity of purpose for the athlete from our standpoint.
Yeah, right.
So, and we talk about it all the time. I mean, just ad nauseum. And sometimes, that age group turns you off. So you got to be really careful on the presentation of the messaging.
Sure.
So that's the nutrition part. And it's continuing. I mean, back when I was in school, there was posters that put up, "You are what you eat." And that's true.
It is.
You want to be, if you eat French fries and fried foods, that's what you're going to run around like. And we try to do is use some of the players that have gone on to the NFL and been very successful when they talk about their diets, when they talk about meal plan, when they talk about those type things. We grab those soundbite, that message, that video, and we're constantly trying to motivate and inspire them from that standpoint, which is great. From the sleep, we're able to give our guys Oura rings so we can monitor. They can monitor their sleep. They don't like us to monitor, but monitoring their sleep. We have the float tanks and the float rooms and those type things to help recover. Messaging, sleep is so important. It's the number one recovery tool in the world. They hear that from the time they're recruited. That's it. Research right now is telling us that in this age group, if they're not getting at least 8 hours of sleep uninterrupted without the blue light, they're 1.7 times more likely to get injured playing football. So those signs, that messaging is all over the building. I bring in sleep experts, Dr. Kramer, Dr. Josh Hagan, who works with our performance innovation team. Those guys are the best in the world at what they do. They come in and talk to our players about sleep and how important it is. And we're all given the same message. I think that helps.
Oh man, that's so comprehensive. When I was there last, I had a meal in your facility upstairs, and there was a piece of paper on each of the tables with some reminders on, how if you're hydrated, how your urine should be, how many ounces of water you should be having, and there's multiple choice, and there's like 3 or 4 questions, and then so. If you read Atomic Habits, make it obvious. So they put it right there on the table. So if you're eating food, it's right there. And there's like 6 of them because there's 6 chairs or 8 of them. And it's like, so there's constantly just letting these people know these things move the needle. These things move the needle. They move the needle. So you can't really walk around. You're inundated all the time. Right? You already said what you like to listen to. Go ahead.
I was going to say we also test their urine and their hydration levels pre-practice. Pre-team workouts. We have 3 or 4 different methods that we use. So, we're making sure that they're hydrated from a nutritional standpoint before they even get on the field.
You always see the first 2 games of the season, people lying on the ground with all the leg cramps because they weren't hydrated. Every year, you'll watching the games, and there's always kids lying down and their legs are up in that stretch trying to get that all cramped up. I know you said you like to listen to everything training, but bucket list adventure you like to go. Where's some place you like to go you haven't been to yet?
I'd like to go to West Point.
West Point. Awesome. We have one of my guys is there. That's awesome. Favorite sports movie?
I got a couple. Remember the Titans? There was a big, a lot of different meanings to that, not just football, but it was great. And then one of my favorite, a lot of people haven't seen it. It's called All the Right Moves with Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, Georgievich.
Yeah, it's about Stefan Georgievich. It's about you guys seen it? It's about defensive back, grew up in a steel mill town, trying to get out of the steel mill town, want to go to college. It actually was about my high school. When I was a senior in high school, the producers of that movie spent like 2 weeks at my high school.
Oh wow,
so
that's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm a little partial to that one.
Favorite athlete?
Michael Jordan's up there.
Yeah,
he's up there. Bad. He was special. Yeah, just everything, preparation and intensity, and he went there to make friends. Man, he wanted to be the best.
He dragged everybody with him. He had players on his team that were Hall of Famers, and he still had to pull them along. Right? Favorite book?
It's ridiculous. Tipping Point. A lot.
Is that the one by Gladwell or the Evans?
Malcolm Gladwell. Yep. Yeah. He's one of my favorite authors.
I read Outliers. I haven't read Tipping Point.
Similar.
Superhero?
But you kind of got to go with Superman, don't you? I mean, kind of covers it all.
And favorite villain?
So, again, growing up in the 70s, remember old Batman, the TV show?
Sure.
I was kind of into the Joker.
So before the Heath Ledger version, who I thought was amazing.
Yes. Amazing. But the Joker, you got to go with the Joker.
A lot of Jokers. We got a lot of people like the Joker.
They do.
Yeah. Yeah, the Joker.
Favorite lift?
Probably squat.
Yeah.
Practice squad.
Favorite way to train? He said work hard. And if you had 10 million, you would take care of your family. Your favorite quote? I don't know who said this. Excuses are the crutches of the uncommitted. Who said that, or is that just yours?
It's not mine. I heard this. I'm not sure where it originated, so I want to give proper due. One of our former players, Roy Hall, played here in the early 2000s. Went on to the NFL. I think he played for the Colts for a little bit. He runs a pretty big ministry here, and he does a lot with some of the underprivileged areas and needed areas of need. And he was speaking to our team one day, and he said that. I'm like, oh my! And I said, where did you say that again? So
Right.
next day, it was up in the weight room. So I've been using that for the last 10 years.
Yeah, I'm gonna commit that one to memory.
Because I've heard them all. I think we've all heard a lot of excuses now. I've heard them all.
Oh yeah. Well, I usually respond with, hey, I'm going to care enough not to listen to that excuse. I'm going to hear it, but I'm not going to listen to it, and we're still going to move forward because we're still having objectives. So I'm going to care enough about you to push you forward. So, hey, Mick, thanks so much. Thanks so much for being generous with your time and your knowledge. I took plenty of notes. Really, really grateful. Thanks for the impact. And one of the things you pointed out, you said you're just trying to be the best version of yourself and leave a legacy. So anytime you can leave an impact, and hopefully this does, which is the purpose of the show, that this knowledge is we're passing along. So you're fulfilling your purpose and leaving an impact. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Hey, Coach, before we let you go, what is something you want to tell high school athletes? What is something that you think is valuable and something that is important for high school athletes to know? Because there's going to be high school athletes that I work with that are going to listen to this and probably need to know. What is one thing you tell them?
Well, I think, kind of figure out what you want. If you want to be an athlete at the next level and you want to go to college and, participate in athletics and, be the best version of yourself, then you have to be willing to pay the price. Preparation, preparation comes first before success. So there's no shortcuts. It is what it is. It takes what it takes. There's a process and there's a learning curve and there's ups and downs. As long as you keep battling, put your head down and just, every day wake up, say, I'm going to be better than I was yesterday. And all of a sudden you win that day, and then you win the week, and then you win the month, and then you win the year. And all of a sudden, you're wherever you want to be and your dreams are fulfilled. So.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Meg.
No problem.